Carlos Fis, partner at Seaya. Seaya, we're a venture capital fund based in Southern Europe. We have over 600 million under management, and we recently launched a fully dedicated climate fund, leveraging exits and successes such as Wallbox, Clarity, Rated Power, and many others. I'm very happy to be here. I'm actually based in Madrid, and it's such a pleasure to have such a strong panel. And I'll be moderating it. So there's many things to talk about, and we have a very short amount of time, but the first one is about why climate tech now. There's always been clean tech, it was called before, now it's called climate tech, and I would love to hear what are your thoughts around why climate now versus clean tech before, and what are your thoughts around the current environment? So we've been hearing the market is a bit difficult, on the general side, but the climate side is booming, and would love to hear more about that. Oh, sorry, I made a question before asking for introductions. Apologies, so please, if you can spend 1 minute, each of you to understand who you are and where you're coming from.
Oh, thank you, Carlos. Hello, good morning, everyone. My name is Ash. I'm a partner at a fund called Lightrock. We are a global technology impact fund based in London, but also have an office in Sao Paulo and in Bangalore and in Nairobi. So what do? We invest in technology, but we look for technology companies which are creating positive impact as a result of what they do. And we measure this by 3 verticals, which is people, planet, and productivity, trying to understand what net good does the company bring. Planet is a very big subject in this endeavor, which is why we also raised a 860 million euro fund. We manage roughly about $5 billion in assets, so we are a growth equity investor. And out of the London office, which is where I sit, we're doing a lot of investments across Europe and the US.
Yes, hi everyone. My name is Celia Gröning. I work in the investment team of Energy Impact Partners. Prior to that, I was with an infrastructure fund called IFM. We invested into Naturgy and Aqualia, so spent a lot of time in Madrid, so great to be back. Energy Impact Partners, we are a global investment platform solely focused on climate tech and energy transition. We have 3 billion assets under management. We have 7 funds today, whereabouts I invest out of the European fund, which is a 400 million euro Series A to C fund. We also have a deep decarbonization fund that invests here in Europe, which is focused on hard to abate sectors, really deep tech. One aspect of EIP that's worth mentioning is that we have a very unique setup where we're backed with a lot of energy companies and utilities in our LP base. And we work very closely with our LPs to create sort of an ecosystem where we connect our startups to the LPs and focus on selling their products and services to our investors. So yeah, that's us.
Thank you so much for the presentation, and happy to be here. My name is Emilio Martínez Gavira. I'm the Open Innovation and Entrepreneurship Director of Enagas. Enagas is a Spanish corporate. Basically what we do, we constrain, operate and maintain the biggest infrastructures. We, Enagas as a corporate, are very well prepared to execute our business model, but for the exploration, we really believe that the open innovation and venture tools are the best one to reach early results. Regarding open innovation, we have several tools from the idea to the market. We do internal entrepreneurship, we do venture building, we do pilots, we also do direct investments in the startups, we also do what we call venture client. For the growth startups, we also invest in funds. We have invested in 2 funds, Clean Energy Transition and Hy24, the largest hydrogen venture infrastructure fund of Europe. Very happy to be here. I'm very happy to look for solutions, ideas, because we as a corporate want to be the partner to deploy your technologies and to help you through any of our tools to take them to the market. We are not new at this. We have 14 startups. And also we are very dynamic and trying to look for the best solution here.
Very good. I'm Rosario Canata. I'm principal of EDP Ventures. EDP Ventures is the corporate venture capital of EDP Group. For those who don't know, EDP is a big company, energy company from Portugal. We have presence in 30 countries now. We are in the production of energy, distribution, and transmission. EDP Ventures, we have around 40 companies in the portfolio as of today, spread all around the globe. We invest in Series A and Series B, mostly energy techs and climate tech. So we are a strategic investor. We invest in companies that can bring value to EDP Group. Very happy to be here and share some ideas with such great professionals. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Now coming back to the question I was mentioning, is why climate tech now and how are you seeing the market? Ash, if you want.
I think this is a very good question. I think climate tech per se, right? It was called Clean Tech 1.0 back in about 10 years ago. It's not new. And people were investing in hydrogen, solar, and a lot of subjects which we hear about again today. But back then, I think a couple of things, right? First and foremost, I think we didn't really see climate change. I mean, it was not that apparent, and so the initiative from the government itself was not there. I mean, when you see the wildfires now happening in Canada today, and all of the US is covered with smoke, people can actually see that climate change is making their lives different. We see wildfires in Europe across now, which were not there before. So the fact that climate was changing was not in the face, which is why people didn't really see the impetus. Second thing was the cost of energy or cost of green energy was a lot higher. So the ownership cost was so much higher than traditional fossil fuels that the business case to be made was not really there. This is why, if you see, the adoption curve was a lot slower. And three, I think the regulatory networks, right? I mean, the regulatory setups were still being figured out. People were not really understanding if really this is something which needs to be done. I think in the last 10 years, so I would say 2010 onwards, the growth has been predominantly, because governments have recognized this is a big problem, we need to solve it. There's been a conscious effort to start making frameworks to deploy green energy within the networks. We're talking a lot about green hydrogen now. Solar panels are being deployed wherever that can be done, and energy is being fed back into the grid, modernizing of the infrastructure of the grid, and investments around that. And at the same time, with the price shocks that have happened in fossil fuels, the price of fossil fuels versus price of green energy is pretty much coming to parity. And then there's the conscious, right? People, citizens themselves understand that if you want to adopt and make the planet a safer place for the future generations, you really need to start investing in green energy. So the drive from citizens themselves also has led investors to start deploying more capital. So I would say, whilst clean tech is not new, the initiatives to put clean tech into place has become a lot better. Secondly, obviously, technology has also advanced a lot now. So we have a lot more efficient technologies, be it from the solar spectrum to hydrogen, nuclear power plants, or grid infrastructure. And that has led to a strong, I would say, acceleration in the second wave.
Sylvia?
Yeah, I think you.
Okay, so thanks for the question, very interesting. I agree with us. Also, to add something, now I think that we as a society, we have decided that to tackle the energy transition and to foster all the governments, the corporates, the civil society have decided to be decarbonized, at least in Europe, in 2050. Mm-hmm. Some companies have decided to be decarbonized in 2040. That means that we need to foster this technology, because the current technology to reach those decarbonization objectives are still in the scientific parks, are still in universities, are still in the academia, and we need to be able to accelerate this technology from the science to the market. Mm-hmm. And who are the people capable of doing that? The innovators. The scientists, we want them to be specialists in R&D, in these technologies, membranes, hydrogen, whatever. But they don't want to be experts in innovation. We, the innovators and the people that fund the innovators, the venture capitalists, are the ones needed to do this transition. That's why I think that in a moment that maybe there are not so many liquidity in the capital market, the energy is booming, because we need to tackle this energy challenge, and we need this technology. That's why many wealthy people, Bill Gates have launched a fund, all the corporate are still launching the funds, EDP, Enagas, and there are more and more, like your fund, looking for these investments. That's why I think that although the market maybe is not that booming, the climate tech is an exception, and the better is still to come.
Let's discuss what makes you excited right now. No, there's many verticals to spend time on. Celia, what are you looking at right now that makes you excited in EIP?
Yeah. So the way we work in order to decide a bit where to play, we have our own research team internally in Energy Impact Partners, and last year we did a big deep dive on heating and cooling. Obviously, 40% of emissions in the EU coming from building, majority of that being heating and cooling. We spent a lot of time deciding which technologies and where to play here. And I think kind of the one that everyone is aware of these days is obviously heat pumps. So my last 2 investments was actually in that space. One of them is a Dutch company called Heat Transformers, which is a digital platform facilitating the sales, installation, and monitoring of heat pumps, doing really well. Another one is also the upfront cost of decarbonizing heat for residential home is very high. So we also did an investment this winter in a UK company called HomeTree, which essentially is a platform facilitating the green financing for this. Asking consumer to pay 10,000 euros to install a heat pump is quite a lot. And so I think to have creative solutions in order to make this affordable for people in the home is very critical. So that was HomeTree. So heating and cooling is definitely one space. A lot of interesting new technologies there as well for installation, for example, that's coming up. The other one that we spent a lot of time on is circularity. We did an investment last year in a company called Grover, which is a subscription platform to keep electronics in going instead of creating new ones. I think EU, we don't have the luxury of having so much raw materials. So you could say repurposing of batteries is a new upcoming area here. You see tons of startups. One of them Spanish, B Planet Factory, I think it's called. But that's an area where we see a lot of good companies coming up. And obviously in the waste space. Waste in general has been an area where venture capital haven't spent too much time, more the incumbents. But that's an area where we see a lot of interesting opportunities now, particularly in Europe.
How are you, Rosario?
Great. As our investment thesis is, are exactly the same as the innovation priorities of EDP as a group. So, which are renewable energy, green hydrogen, smart mobility, smart grid, and decarbonization, energy storage, and flexibility. So, all those innovation priorities are important for our group, in order to continue to keep leading the energy transition. And in my case, I've been looking a lot into EDP renewables, into renewable energy and green hydrogen. So recently we invested in Easy Labs, a French company. The company is developing a technology, is a liquid carrier for green hydrogen. So they are for the transportation, long distance transportation of green hydrogen. So their goal is that one day we're going to produce hydrogen in Latin America, where energy is going to be maybe much cheaper than Europe, and then charge this liquid with hydrogen, and then transport boat, and then sell the energy, discharge the hydrogen in Europe, and sell the hydrogen in Europe. So that's a company that we invested recently together with Equinor Ventures and other interesting French investors. Also, we are studying a lot of opportunities in the hydrogen space, in the electrolyzer. It's very difficult because there is so many companies doing a new electrolyzer every 2 weeks, which is 1% more efficient. And the round, they've been crazy valuation, a huge round. So what changed, compared to the past? Maybe in climate, things haven't changed a lot. We still see high valuation. We still see huge rounds. What I see is the difference is like we are taking more time, in order to evaluate the company, to sign a term sheet. After 3 years ago, it was like they sent us a term sheet that we needed to have a decision in 2 weeks. Now we can do it in 2 months, and bring on the business unit. That was the case, for example, with Easy Labs. Also, we're looking in opportunities. We are pretty much, almost close a company and opportunities in the utility scale automation and construction. So we're going to deploy a lot of gigawatt of solar in the United States and in Europe in the next years. So we're going to need technology in order to do that. So we are investing in a company that is going to help with the robotization of the construction and Rover to build faster utility scale solar.
If I may add on a perspective here, when we think about green energy and we think about climate change, we always think about the traditional, like hydrogen, solar, and which is right. But we actually don't realize, we are all using cell phones, we're using computers, and we're using more and more services like Netflix and Amazon Prime and stuff like this. The cost of digitization also is leading to a big footprint or a big carbon footprint on the planet, which we don't realize. If you remember back in 2011, Mark Andreessen said that software will eat the world, but it's actually eating the world, because the rate at which we are digitizing and the rate at which we are consuming digital services right now means all our data is actually going through a data center. And data centers tend to become one of the biggest consumers of electricity on the planet. Just to give you some numbers here, back in 2010, roughly 2% of the electricity produced in the United States was used for data centers. 10 years on, that's 2x. That's twice the number of, so 4% of United States energy is used. The same thing is happening in Europe and the same thing is happening in Asia. There are large parts of the world which don't have access to electricity, but the carbon footprint or the amount of energy that a data center requires is so colossal that we're diverting a lot of the energy there. Now, because of which, and there is a second challenge which we don't realize, is data centers are basically a collection of computers. But these computers are running non-stop and are burning energy, producing heat. And at the same time, because of the fact that every 3 to 4 years, due to Moore's law, these computers become old, they're thrown away. So the e-waste we create out of them is also a huge problem. So now there is interesting technologies coming out, which will be for cooling the data centers. Like there's a company here in Spain called Submer, you must have heard of. Or there are companies which are used to orchestrate the servers to reduce the amount of energy they consume whilst improve the performance. Because we've all heard of ChatGPT, generative AI, and all these good things. This will further increase the amount of energy we require to run our computers. So there are some very interesting technological advances being made there. We at Lightrock we've done a huge deep dive onto data centers, because another area for decarbonization is actually the data center, which we absolutely need to do as our consumption of digitalization is not going to reduce, it's only increasing.
Fantastic, thank you so much. Now moving to the impact side, no? I mean, there's many of us that we are trying to get the best returns to our investors or the best synergies to our corporates, no? But what about impact, no? So I would like to understand if you measure impact or not in your investments, and if so, how do you do that, no? And maybe Emilio, you can start.
Sure. The beauty of this moment, it's okay, yeah. The beauty of this moment is that all the energy startup companies have several tools to fund their priorities, funds also corporates, and we as a corporate, we need to act also in the end as a corporate venture capital, because we as a corporate, we are not only strategic investors, we can be also technical investors, also financial investors, not only financial investors like the fund. And so we need to also have our proper impact and KPIs of our basically activity regarding open innovation. So for instance, for us, the impact in sustainability is very important, but itself is not a KPI, because any investment we do or any initiative we do might be sustainable. Otherwise, we wouldn't do that. So any investment we do, it might decarbonize, it might have a positive impact in case of emissions. So for us, it's compulsory. If it doesn't have this impact, we wouldn't invest. Also, it needs to be economic impact. Okay, we know that in the short term, we are more strategic investors, we are more technical investors, we are more, let's say, industrial investors. And it's very important, our role, because for many companies, when you are in the growth stage, the money of the funds or the money of the banks is good to be quicker. But if you need to check this electrolyzer, or if you need to test this liquid, LOHC of HCDF, you need a company like us, because we have the assets. So we have some unfair advantages, our assets that are crucial to beta test these technologies that in the long term will be invested by the funds. And obviously we need to check if these companies are going well. In the short term, the impact of each investment are very technical. Okay, this doesn't work, but in the long term, it might be financial. So we have our own P&L in the long term, knowing that we are going to do several investment and several, let's say, initiative with the startups. As I said before, we do venture building, we do pilots, we do venture client, we do investments, knowing that some of them are going to fail, some of them are going to be okay, and in the long term, the average is going to be positive. I always say the why of innovation in a corporate is the why of incomes. So we need incomes, maybe not in the short term, but just in the long term, and with our own, let's say, a strategic financial plan, and we need to follow it, basically.
Well, thank you. And what about EIP? How do they measure impact?
Yeah. So we have an own internal team that we work with on the investments to really quantify the impact we're having on carbon. So I think the term everyone here will be fairly familiar with is the avoided emissions. And so as part of the investment process, we calculate, let's say for heat pump, for example, by installing this heat pump in X amount of home, you will have avoided this many this many tons of CO2. Similarly for other technologies as well, being it we invested in a company called MetaFuels, which is developing a technology for sustainable aviation fuels through the green methanol route. And there you also, same way, you really quantify in terms of if X amount of liters is using this renewable fuel versus traditional jet fuel, then how many CO2 have you saved? So we're doing a very quantified approach, and that's just part of the investment process. After we've done the investment, this team worked with every portfolio company. We've done 100 investments, over 100 investments so far, to create their net zero trajectory in terms of how can also our portfolio companies reach net zero with their emissions. So yeah, very structured approach.
Very good. Yeah. In case of EDP, we are a strategic investor. So this means that, of course, financial return is important. So we want to have exit. We want to measure IRR, cash on cash. It's very, very important for us in order to be sustainable in the long terms financially. But strategic impact for us is much more important. So if we make 5 or 10 or 20 million for EDP, it's nothing. It's a very big company. So we need to show how we do real strategic impact within our organization. So in order to do that, we need to measure, and it's not easy. Sometimes it's not easy. So for us, what is important is, in a portfolio of 40 companies, how many companies of our portfolio today works with EDP? How many of them? How many of them have new pilots every year, every 3 months, every 6 months? So we measure that. And if we have 10 pilots of $5,000, it's nothing. So we measure the total contract value. So is this big enough? So we are bringing value to the organization or not? Because if I sign a contract of $1 million, it's different of a pilot of $5,000. So that's what we measure as strategic impact. Now, in order, we want to evolve. So we are starting to study if we can measure CO2 reduction, which is something that everybody wants to do it, but it's very difficult because we need to understand which is the methodology of this CO2 reduction, measurement of each startups. There is a lot of greenwashing, so we don't want to be in that, So we are starting to study CO2 reduction. In order to do it, in the next months, and also we measure, of course, in terms of social impact. For example, in Brazil, we started measuring diversity and the female in women as founders, etc. So that's also very, very important for us as an organization.
Excellent. And how about you, Ash?
We are an impact fund, as I mentioned. This has been part of our DNA since the very beginning. Our funds are Article 9, so we are regulated by the framework. But beyond that, I think what you just said, Rosario, was very important, right? It's the financial return, but also what is the positive return to society, what you do as a result of the technologies that we are investing in. So for us, we have built proprietary frameworks here, which we bucket them into 3 silos, like I was saying. So it's people, it's planet, and it's productivity. And we try to understand what net good does this company do. Now, how do we do that? If it's the climate, every company we are looking at, we try to understand how does this technology directly reduce the GHG component. We don't look for proxies there, we look for direct impact. And so the technology should have a meaningful reduction in, it could be methane, it could be carbon dioxide, it could be the NOx or the SOx. On the other side, well-being of people is very important, or improving the productivity of an economy is also very important for us. So that is also impact. And so we look at technologies which are improving the well-being of those two segments equally. And there we tend to use a combination of proxy signals through the operations of the business. So for example, choosing what type of customers we sell to our technology and who we want. Trying to see how will the technology actually enrich the lives of the people who are using this product, depending on what we're investing in. And so we build a bunch of KPIs which are tailored to every company. And when we are doing our diligence, we tend to map this and check if the company is actually doing this. So we're trying to avoid greenwashing per se. And once we have invested, so we will do that as a part of our diligence. But once we have invested, we will, as part of our board pack, also encourage the company to report these. We want to see how is the company performing on the KPIs that we mutually agreed on over a period of time, so that we can see how the company does. And then obviously we publish this as a part of our report also annually every year. We have a chief impact officer who's doing that. And so yeah, so we're doing our little bit in that regard, but it's a long way to go. But yeah, we're trying to get more transparency into impact.
Fantastic, fantastic. I think we have time for a couple more questions. One that it's very interesting because we have here global investors, no? Our fund focuses purely on Europe, but BlackRock invests globally. EIP actually has a European fund, no, and a global fund. So we'd love to hear your perspective on why Europe, no, versus US. No, there might be some sectors that are more interesting here, some there, and we'd love to understand how you think around that. Sylvia, if you can.
Yeah, yes. So we're the flagship European fund. The other 6 funds are in the US. Obviously, it's kind of difficult to not notice this 1.3 trillion package, the IRA that came out of the US recently. And so we did a very thorough analysis on this within EIP. There's some sectors that Europe are clearly leading as of today, being it EV, sales and adoption, and being it offshore wind, and also heat pumps. Even if the IRA has, lured being it solar, batteries, etc., now to the US, we think heat pumps and offshore wind are kind of 2 key sectors where we think also, regardless of what's happening in the US, then investing here in Europe is very certain. Yeah.
Interesting. And for Lightrock?
Very well said, right? IRA has been a big push to drive growth of infrastructure in the US. And so climate businesses are seeing a massive push because of the government wanting to endorse this. So we're seeing, we see on both sides of the pond, but on the US side, solar adoption has been at its peak in the US, so that's been amazing. But at the same time, battery technology in Europe is growing much faster because the need for EV, especially with the energy shocks that Europe has seen over the last 2-3 years, has driven the adoption for EV and EV-related infrastructure. At the same time, the US is doing an amazing job now in laying out green hydrogen, and Europe is also trying to follow suit. So you're seeing, I would say, net, both sides, Europe and US, we are seeing equally good quality technology companies being built, but at the same time, these companies are CapEx heavy. They need money. This is where we need more capital to go into these sectors. It is going, but we need more capital to go into these segments for the adoption to become faster. IRA has an unfair advantage for US companies, and thus they can scale faster there. We need something to be deployed in Europe soon, I would say. But net, we are seeing some phenomenal companies on both sides of the pond, and it's important we support the European ones.
Fantastic.
Just to add something, now for Europe it's very important, the decarbonization, everything changed last year, and there are several very big European initiatives that are leading actually our activity. First of all, the Green Deal. We want to be decarbonized in 2050. Second one, Fit for 55. We want to accelerate this decarbonization, and we want to reduce 55% of our emissions till 2030, and then REPowerEU. So we need to be self-efficient. And that means that for Europe it's compulsory to boost energy transition and compulsory to bring the clean tech startup to fulfill these requirements. And that's why our scouting, we are all investors, might be global, but the impact might be in Europe, basically. So it's a huge opportunity for the startups to do business here, to make business here, to have impact here. Because this is compulsory, not for us as investors, as corporate, as a society. We want to do this. So I think that now it's in the first step of the agenda of the European government. That's why it's a big opportunity for all the clean tech entrepreneurs to help us to fulfill these decarbonization objectives.
Fantastic. We have literally 1 minute, so we want one word, no? Rapid fire is, what is your favorite company that is not in your portfolio? Rosario.
Okay, I don't know if it's my favorite, but one of the interesting company that we have not invested yet, I know. But it's Pachama, for example, is a marketplace. I think you are an investor, right?
We are.
Yeah.
Thank you for the mention.
Okay. So Pachama is a marketplace. They work they connect a project in the Amazon for carbon capture, carbon avoidance. So they protect forests, and then they sell the carbon credits to corporates. So they're doing a lot of good work in Latin America and with big corporations. So I hope, to invest one day maybe.
Fantastic. Emilio?
That's several. I mean, our job is to say no to companies. And then the portfolio, when you see, it's a tricky question because you only regret the companies that go well. Some in some companies of hydrogen storage, company waste to hydrogen. I don't want to say the name. Yes, not. I don't want to disturb them, but yeah, several.
Okay.
Yes, I'm a big fan of solar installation, heat pump installation. So we are invested in German Solar and Dutch heat transformers. There's a Czech company called Voltaire, which does both of them. And I like it because it's focused on execution. So we have a lot of good technologies developed, but what we really need is installing it in the homes or in the industry. And Voltaire, same as heat transformers and solar, are tackling that and making it happen.
Fantastic. Finally?
So I invest in both US and Europe. So for me, if in the US, it's an EIP company. We don't realize, but our homes need insulation because our homes are also a big source of energy loss and climate change. So there's a brilliant company in the EIP portfolio called AeroSeal, which is this insulation technology, which is used to make homes and buildings more energy efficient and heat proof. And it's a very simple technology, so it can be deployed at scale. It's a brilliant company scaling very fast, so I really like the one.
Fantastic. Well, thanks to all our panelists and the audience. We ran out of time, and let's catch up in the conference if you want to speak.